You're listening to the Apple Insider Podcast.
Welcome to episode 105 of the Apple Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Victor Marks, and joining me is Mikey Campbell. Hey, Mikey.
What's up?
We are going to talk all about Apple, iPod, iPad, Mac, and more. And starting off, I want to talk about what could happen with TouchID. TouchID is a favorite feature of all of the current iPhones. It's been on an iPhone since iPhone 5S, and it's going to change. I mean, it changed most recently on the iPhone 7, where instead of being a physical button, it's now just a part of the glass with a haptic engine behind it. But we've got a piece of news, a piece of information that says that it's going to change even more. Mikey, what's that about?
So, everyone's favorite analyst, Ming-Chi Kuo, he's saying Apple's going to, maybe not this next generation of iPhone, but some future generation, they're going to try to move away from Touch ID and go for a more hands-off solution. So probably facial recognition or iris recognition. So users don't even need to interact with the device at all to unlock it, but still have that same security.
Well, now wait. So you're saying it's going to be two-step, facial and fingerprint?
Well, for first, so that's the plan is to go full facial recognition, but in between, he's saying that there's going to have to be some sort of hybrid before they get there, because the facial tech is not it's not fully fleshed out yet. So in between there's going to be some sort of two-factor, or actually maybe not two-factor, but I don't know. It could be two-factor method of securing your phone. So you're going to have to input the fingerprint and or your face. I would assume it would be one or the other. But the way he's saying is that you can't really rely on the facial recognition tech right now, especially because Apple doesn't have any of those assets in place. It would take a long time to build out the database and the machine learning algorithms and the computer vision stuff. So none of that is in place right now. So they're going to have to build that out first. And while they're doing that, they're going to maybe make a switch.
Right. So there are a lot of barriers to this, right? One of them is software design that has to be changed for it, the hardware component development that has to exist for it, the creation of the database and backend, as you said, and also to have all that running in device requires a lot of computing power.
Yeah, I would assume the facial recognition, just to make it work, would have to be offloaded.
Well, it's interesting because there have been other phones that have had facial recognition in them that haven't really worked very well, but they've had it. There have also been other laptops. Lenovo did this a few years ago, where they used the webcam to try and unlock your Windows computer. Yeah.
Well, the thing with those, you can do it on device, obviously, right? I mean, there's software available that you can recognize someone's face, but to what degree? I mean, to use it as a security feature, it will have to be, very accurate. So it'll have to depend on a database that's pretty vast. So I would assume that would be offloaded to an offsite server, but who knows?
Well, you know that Apple would probably prefer to keep it in just because, as opposed to offloading it, because privacy.
Yeah, but still they do the same thing with Siri, right? They offload pretty much everything that goes through Siri to an offsite server. And there's some, potential for personal information to get out.
Yeah. Now, why wouldn't they just use eye scanning?
Well, Kuo believes that they're leaning towards facial because they have a lot of patents for facial recognition stuff. We've covered a lot of them, and we've also covered the iris stuff. But it seems like the facial is the way to go. Plus, they made all those purchases, right, of facial. They bought FaceShift, that small, I think it was a German company, right, who specialized in not facial recognition just pure vanilla facial recognition, but facial recognition and face scanning technology for the movie market.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the iPhone 8 that this potentially could be in is a stainless steel glass sandwich with wireless charging, a next generation 3D touch tech, and potentially facial scanning.
I would say not this round, maybe not even next year either. So some future iteration. But what could make it into this year's iPhone is a optical TouchID, which isn't really TouchID at all, although they would probably name it TouchID. But instead of, the capacitive scanning module that they have in there now, which requires the stainless steel ring to send, a small current through your finger, they'll go just to a pure optical solution that takes a scan of your fingerprint. And he's saying that, that would solve the problem of having a full face iPhone, which
edge to screen, right?
Yeah. So instead, because right now what they would have to do is have an edge screen, and they'd have a huge hole in it at the bottom or wherever they want to put it to fit in Touch ID, or move it to the back of the device. But I don't think Apple would do that. So what he's saying is that they're looking to do optical, which can be placed underneath the OLED screen. So it would be invisible to the user, but it would still be there. But the problem for that is, of course, the OLED manufacturers are going to have to custom make or custom manufacture their panels to accommodate this technology, either by making the pixel width, or pixel pitch near the sensor a bit wider to accommodate the optical module, or by integrating it completely into the laminated panel. So we'll see where that goes. That could end up on the next, or on this year's iPhone, the special edition one, as I like to call it.
But we already have a special edition one. That's the small one.
It is super special. Special.
Okay. Talking about other things that are special. Do you use night shift mode on your iPhone?
Yep. I have it set up every night.
And what do you do for your computer?
Nothing. I did use, what was that third-party app?
I'm using it now. It's called Flux.
Yeah, Flux. I used to use that. I try to stay away from my computer at nighttime. I never do, but
Yeah.
It's not like I use my computer in bed, so it's not really a problem for me.
Well, you're kind of a desktop guy, right? You don't use a laptop, really.
No, I use a laptop.
Yeah, you do? So you just avoid bringing your laptop to bed.
Yeah.
That's very smart of you. I instead use the Flux third party, although it looks like I won't need to, because in macOS Sierra, the 10.12.4 beta, it appears that there's a new night shift mode, which does just what Flux does, what night shift does on the iOS, which is they reduce the amount of blue light in the screen as it's displayed, because blue light is one of those things that fools your body into staying awake.
Messes with your circadian rhythm, brah.
Messes with your circadian rhythm. Actually messes also with your eyes for extended viewing periods. If you ever look at the glasses that are amber lenses for gaming.
Yeah, the Gunnar.
Yeah, the Gunnar glasses. They filter out the blue light as well. So
some screen makers are making. I think I just bought a monitor from what is this? This is a Asus. It has a low blue light mode. So they're doing that too. The monitor market doesn't really work that well, but whatever.
Well, so would you use this mode on your Macs?
Probably not, because I need. If I'm working, I need the color reproduction to be what other people are seeing at all times.
Accurate, yeah.
So probably not. But if my job was not to publish pictures and other such media to the masses, then I would probably use it. Yeah.
Okay, I would definitely use it. if you're listening out there and you use your computer at night or in bed, let us know. And let us know if you use Night Shift on iOS, because I'm curious to see what the uptake or what the need is for this on the laptop. I know that I need it because I'm up all hours doing stuff, and I have Flux change it for me at night. But I'm curious to know how many others are out there.
Do you see a difference, or can you notice? Do you feel a difference in your body? Because I don't know. The jury's out, right?
There's a couple of problems. One of them is you're already staying up late, and anytime you're staying up late, you're essentially creating a sleep deficit, and you're proving, above all, that you're able to stay awake as opposed to being productive. Your productivity drops off, but you're proving you can still stay up. But I do find that once I do close the laptop after having had it open, I'm able to fall asleep more quickly than if I'd had it with its regular blue light displaying at me.
Interesting.
Is that scientific? No. That's anecdotal, but it's my experience.
Interesting. You think it's a placebo effect?
I don't know, but I do know that I had this laptop reinstalled without Flux on it, and was using it that way for a few months, and it took me regularly anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes to fall asleep. And closing it with Flux running and having been running, I'm closer to 10 or 20. So there is a difference.
Interesting.
I think.
Cool. Might have to try it out. I don't know.
Yeah. Talking about features in betas, tell me about iOS 10.3's beta.
Oh, the Find My AirPods, eh?
Yeah. Well, first of all, do you have AirPods?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you worried about losing them?
Not as much as I am worried about my cat eating it. So I'm less worried about losing it than it going inside an animal's stomach. Because I don't
would not be good.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I take it out of my ear, I just put it right back in the case.
That's your method for preventing it from getting lost or eaten.
I don't know. It's not something that I do consciously. It's just, I feel like, I don't know, that's just where they belong. But I mean, I can see people just taking it out and tossing it on the table or whatever.
I was talking just to a guy about losing stuff, and he said that he always lost his pens, writing utensils. He always lost his pens until he bought a nice pen. And once he had a nice pen that he'd spent a lot of money on, he kept up with it just by virtue of not wanting to lose it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
So how does Find My AirPods work?
So every time your AirPods connect or ping your host device like an iPhone, the iPhone logs that location, or wherever that location is for the iPhone, its own location, and creates kind of like a Bluetooth range, like an estimate of how far away your AirPods could be, and plots that on the Find My iPhone map. So the Find My iPhone, this feature is actually in Find My iPhone.
Right. It's integrated into the same app that we've had for quite a while.
Yeah. So just like Apple Watch got integrated into that, now there's an AirPod feature in there. So you go into the app, if hopefully you linked it to a device that has iCloud, and if you did, then you'll see a little line for AirPods, and you can tap on that to see the last known location. Unless you're using it, then it'll just show up as wherever your iPhone is or wherever.
Right. Now, if you lose them, can you play a sound on them?
You can. There's an option so if you select play sound, at that point you'll probably not be connected to it, right? So it'll play a sound whenever you connect to it next. So let's say you lost your left ear pod out when you're running somewhere. You can walk to that area where it was plotted on the map, and then it should hopefully connect back up to your iPhone, and then it'll play a sound. It's not very loud, so I mean, if you're doing it indoors, it's much better. But if you lose it when you're running or something, I would suggest only playing the sound at nighttime or whenever it's quiet,
low traffic hours or something.
Yeah. Because it also diminishes the battery, right?
Right. Well, because it's got to be connected to receive the signal to play, and it's got to be running full volume, so it uses battery to do that.
It's actually a rising and falling tone, so it's kind of it's a bit better than just playing like a solid tone. It's a bit more apparent, but still, it's pretty quiet.
So the other problem is the range on them is quite good, right?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the we did like a short hands-on kind of thing. Depending on the W1 chip, it could be like you could be searching an area that's like a couple hundred square feet. So tough to easy to connect, but tough to find if you are looking in a bunch of stuff inside, or maybe even like outdoors on a road or in a forest. I don't know, wherever you run.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. What's your advice besides using this, which is probably a good idea? Do you think that you're going to put the neck strap that keeps the two AirPods tied together on yours?
No, because if I wanted to do that, I'd buy the Beats headphones. Okay. Yeah. I bought it because it's completely untethered, so I can use one at a time if I want to.
All right,
and not have not have the other one dangling.
Yeah.
But
so
I'll take the chance.
The chance.
If I lose one, I'll have to pay the $60 to replace it.
Yeah, but you're not going to lose them because A, you put them right back in your case, and B, you take care of these things.
Yeah. Well, part of the putting it back in the case is the case charges it. So I mean, it's kind of intuitive to do that. So I don't know. I think most people put it back in the case. Unless they, take it out for running and leave the case at home. Just come home and plop it down somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Pretty cool. Well, I want to take a moment and talk about Casper mattresses. Neil has this mattress, and I've thought about getting one. It's an obsessively engineered mattress. They even show them at CES, the electronics show, for crying out loud, at a really fair price. It's a supportive memory foam that creates an award-winning sleep surface with just the right amount of sink and the right amount of bounce. And Time magazine thought it was one of the best inventions of 2015. And you can try Casper for 100 nights risk-free in your own home. And if you don't love it, they'll pick it up and refund you everything. Casper understands the importance of truly sleeping on a mattress before you commit, especially considering you're going to spend a third of your life on it. Free shipping and returns to the U.S. and Canada. With over 20,000 reviews and an average of 4.8 stars, it's really quickly become the internet's favorite mattress. And you, our listeners, can get $50 towards any mattress purchase by visiting casper.com/insider and using the offer code INSIDER. Terms and conditions may apply, but Neil loves his. So if you don't enjoy your current bed, please consider trying out a Casper. Now, Mikey, we were talking about this before we started recording. Roger wrote this story about a iPhone-compatible spectroscopy chip called the NeoSpectra Micro that has been demonstrated in an iPhone case. Yeah. So you put your iPhone in this case, and then with this special chip, it can analyze food and drinks for things like caffeine, gluten levels. It could conceivably be built into wearables. You could scan for things like your glucose levels without having to lance yourself. What's the theory behind this article that we wrote?
The theory?
Yeah.
The theory is that Apple is going to include this in a future Apple Watch.
Okay. So why do we think that could happen?
Well, Apple wants Apple Watch to be much more than it is. They want it to be the health device. They don't want it to be the fitness device that it is now, and that they're pushing so hard for now.
Wait. I got to ask, because the first time they released Apple Watch, it was very much about health. You agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. And with this release of Watch 2, it's been all refocused around physical fitness and athleticism.
Right.
Am I still right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you're saying that with this refocus, that's not their eventual path. That's not what they really want.
I think they really want it to be a health device. I mean, there was the report that came out, when was it? A few months ago, talking about how the watch was not born of its own. It was born because of Apple's shift in focus to health solutions like HealthKit. It was born from that effort. So it was kind of an ancillary invention that they made so they can push forward their health initiative. So having a fitness tracker, I mean, that's fine, but for a holistic health tracking is much more than a pedometer and stuff like that, and CareKit apps. You want something that is monitoring your body and biometric signals at all times when, a watch is good for that. But the technology is just not there. Plus the fact that they have to go through a whole bunch of regulatory hurdles, especially in the US, to getting a health device out there. So first step, get the device out there to however hundreds of thousands or millions of consumers, depending on what stats you're looking at. Next step, creating or turning that device into a full-fledged health tracker and not just a fitness tracker. And this chip, while I don't think they'll include the specific piece of hardware, they'll probably do something, something that they created, like they created their own pulsometer or pulse oximeter.
No, they don't have pulse ox in the Apple Watch. They have heart rate, but they don't have pulse ox.
What do they call it? It's not a pulse ox. What do they call it?
They're not measuring your oxygen levels by shining light through your skin. They're measuring the heart rate. And it is that special technology with the green LEDs, but it's not. Okay. So spectroscopy is the science of analyzing wavelengths absorbed and emitted by materials. So you can kind of understand their chemical composition based on what the wavelength looks like, what's reflected, what's absorbed. And this particular chip that we've been talking about is an 18 by 18 millimeter chip, which sounds pretty small, but is in fact pretty substantial when you look at the size of the Apple Watch.
Mm-hmm.
The Apple Watch is 38 millimeters, and this thing takes up quite a bit of that, let's say.
It would replace it would completely replace the heart rate monitor on the bottom.
It would have to.
Or be fully integrated into, perhaps behind it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the way the heart rate sensor is, it already has the 4 or the 2 LED emitters and 2 receivers. So I don't know.
Well, and this particular chip costs $100, it seems. So it's probably also impractical to integrate into current devices at that price. But as you say, it looks like there's going to be more sensors coming. And
mm-hmm.
Do you think we'll see that anytime soon? Do you think we'll see that in something like a third-generation watch?
Probably not. From what I hear, the third gen is just going to be thinner. And
faster processor, better battery life?
Maybe not better battery life, but thinner.
All right.
Maybe a couple years.
Couple years. Yeah. Okay.
We'll see.
So let's talk a little bit about Qualcomm. Apple started a relationship with Qualcomm as far back as the iPhone 4, when they made the first iPhone that worked on CDMA networks.
Mm-hmm.
And they went to Qualcomm at that time because Qualcomm owns all the patents on CDMA cell modems.
Right.
So it made good sense for that. Now, Qualcomm and Apple are embroiled in a deep lawsuit, in a big, big lawsuit.
Multiple.
Tell me about these multiple lawsuits. What's going on here?
Well, Apple's saying that Qualcomm is extorting its customers by a whole slew of kind of shady business practices. Like, they won't sell you components unless you license the supposedly standard essential patents first, and they're not charging FRAND rates for the patents that they do license. And they have they have secret deals with secondary manufacturers which Apple buys the actual chips from, So what basically Qualcomm's business model is they'll license the IP to contract manufacturers, smaller companies. Then Apple buys the chips from them, as well as licensing the SEPs at the same time. They'll be paying for those.
So rates, that's paying twice for the same license, basically.
Yeah, but the problem is Apple's not seeing what patents or how much these contract manufacturers are paying Qualcomm. So because the agreements are secret and Qualcomm will not license those patents directly to Apple. So basically Qualcomm is charging exorbitant rates, supposedly, according to Apple, to these CMs. And then the CMs are passing those fees along to Apple because Qualcomm knows Apple can pay it. So they won't deal with them directly, and a bunch of other things. So.
Now, so Apple is asserting that it's price gouging and extortion and more because Qualcomm is the only one that can provide this IP.
Right.
And
Qualcomm is saying
they're alleging this double dipping.
Yeah, and Qualcomm is saying that this is not a regulatory issue because Apple's bringing FRAND rates, which is a regulatory issue.
So that stands for fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory.
Yes.
Right. That's basically saying that when you license a patent, you're not paying an exorbitant rate for it.
Or, well, more specifically, standard essential or patents that are deemed standard essential. So those are the patents that cover things like wireless frequencies and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So the stuff that Qualcomm owns or developed. So they should be licensing that at FRAND rates, but they are supposedly not.
Yeah, and Apple is saying this, and Qualcomm's coming back and saying basically Apple just wants to pay less.
Right. And they're making a regulatory issue out of an issue that should stay between businesses. And they're also alleging that Apple is feeding information to a bunch of regulatory agencies around the world, including the US and China and South Korea, where the latter of which Qualcomm just got slapped with a pretty hefty, I think, $354 million fine for unfair business practices related to their licensing agreements.
The Korean Fair Trade Commission leveled an $854 million.
Yeah.
So, so where did this $1 billion in unpaid license rebates come in? Because Apple says that's what's triggering the suit here.
Okay, so to so Qualcomm charges you for exclusivity to certain SEPs, and then they will pay you back, or pay Apple back in this case. And they withheld that rebate because supposedly Apple says Apple cooperated with the KFTC. So,
this sounds like a bad high school spat.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's in Apple's best interest, obviously, to get the best rates.
Well, first of all, it's in their best interest to get the best rates, and second of all, what are you going to not cooperate with the Korean Free Trade Commission? Yeah,
well, beyond that, the contracts that they have with Apple, with Qualcomm, specify that they obviously can talk to trade bodies and regulatory agencies. It's specifically noted in there. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird thing. I don't know. I feel like, Qualcomm's license IP practices have been kind of sketchy in the past, and the FTC is already investigating, or they did investigate and has its own lawsuit against Qualcomm that was, I think, revealed 2 weeks ago. So Qualcomm their practices have been questioned many times in the past. So Apple's just kind of piling onto that.
Yeah. Does this have anything to do with Apple using Intel modems instead of Qualcomm modems in the iPhone?
Well, since Qualcomm hasn't really, it could. They didn't specify that in the suit. They didn't say that, they're withholding nearly $1 billion in rebates because we're diversifying our supply chain. But, ironically, could blow up in their face, and Apple, could diversify even further and negotiate better rates at the same time from Qualcomm. So Qualcomm could be the big loser here. We don't know. And that's probably why they took up, almost half of their earnings call yesterday talking about the various lawsuits that are floating around now.
Well, that's not the only one, right?
Yeah, there's 2 in China, basically asserting the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. We'll see. Seems like Apple has the upper hand, but Qualcomm is saying that they'll file a countersuit, of course. And in the meantime, they'll still honor their agreements with the contract manufacturers so Apple can have their CDMA modems.
Well, it's kind of a good thing for Qualcomm to do that, because if they, I don't know the terms, but if they're licensed based on every device sold that's equipped with it, then they want to keep those devices going so that the amount keeps increasing.
Right. Well, Qualcomm's contracts are technically with the contract manufacturers, and then Apple buys the components from those manufacturers. So they're really upholding their end of the bargain with the CMs. But of course, they make lots of money from that because Apple buys the premium.
They buy a lot, don't they?
Yeah, they buy quite a bit.
Just a few. Yeah. So Apple's also being sued, along with an ad agency that they used, over a voice sample used in an iPhone 6 TV commercial. Mm. There was a commercial for the iPhone 6, which is, of course, now a 2-year-old phone, that had a sample of a 70s group called The Persuasions that was used inside a song by Jamie XX that was, and I sure hope I'm pronouncing that right because I'm not that much of a fan.
Not a fan?
He's a fine artist. He's a Grammy-nominated artist for the album In Colors, but I am not a listener. But at any rate, the track takes samples from the Persuasions song Good Times, which was used in the Apple commercial. And I would have thought, just on the face of this, right, it's 2017, laws around music licensing and sampling were pretty well figured out by now.
You would think wrong, sir.
Well, no, I would be correct, because the detail is that this suit is not about sampling. This suit is about a California right called the right to publicity, where Californian law says that if your voice or your signature or photograph or likeness is used knowingly to sell something without that person's prior consent, then that person who used that voice or signature is liable for damages sustained.
Interesting, and sounds highly subjective, but
well, obviously the lawyers get to work that out with the judge, but basically someone can't take your face or your music and go and use it without your consent. Where when you're licensing music, you just pay the Harry Fox agency and pay the licensing fees. You don't have to get consent. Here, you do. And so that's what their claim is about, at least in part. The other part of the complaint is that there was a violation of collective bargaining agreements with Screen Actors Guild and the American Federation of Television Radio Artists, which allows separate bargaining with singers over commercial licensing.
I wonder how they would
basically
do that,
saying he didn't get paid enough.
I wonder
so
how
first
they
of all,
would,
he didn't get paid enough because they used his voice without permission, and second of all, he didn't get paid enough under the Screen Actors Guild and radio artists.
I wonder how they would negotiate the fees for just a California, since it's a California policy.
Well,
just where it aired in California.
I mean, the way they'd have to do it is they'd have to look at the music and identify who was on the sample, and then contact that person and agree to pay them ahead of time, as opposed to just producing it and going with it and paying the licensing through, like I said, one of the agencies.
But how much? I wonder.
Well, Lawson's complaining that he's injured by more than $10 million.
Oh, wow.
Because here's what
my voice is worth $10 million. So.
Yeah, my voice is also not worth $10 million yet. But what he's saying is that fans of the Persuasions might recognize his voice within this sample of the Jamie XX song and conclude that the Persuasions and the singer are endorsing Apple, when that clearly isn't true.
You know why I bought my iPhone?
Why did you buy your iPhone?
Because a group from the 70s endorsed it.
There you go. They were good, right?
They were so good that when I saw them endorse the iPhone, I said, hey, I need to have that device.
Well, absolutely. And this is not the first time this kind of lawsuit has come up. There was another one last year against Google for an advertisement that was done for their Nexus smartphones, and there was one against Scripps for home and garden television. But both of those cases were dropped before a ruling could take place. And so the question is, will this one be dropped, or will this one make it to a ruling?
No, I doubt it. I mean, Apple will probably settle out of court.
For more than $10 million in damages?
Not more than that, I'm sure.
No. So, in other news, Apple's Tim Cook has managed to cash in another chunk of company stock.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's done this a couple of times in the past couple of weeks, so this is the second time. Just a few days ago, he cashed in Apple shares worth $3.6 million.
Yeah.
And then he sold another batch in an almost identical amount.
Yeah. Well, it's important to note that these were planned sales from 2015. So it's not like he's saying, my God, the ship is going down. I need to...
Surprise, I need to bail.
I need to bail everything. Sell it all. Yeah, so these were planned sales according to his... whatever his sell-off plan, or whatever his obligations were. So this was decided 2 years ago, almost. So, I mean, yeah, it's a sell-off, and he did get docked not really docked, but he did get, he missed out on the performance bonus.
And how big was that bonus, Mikey?
I don't know. How big was it?
$1.5
billion.
million.
Yeah, not a lot.
So he missed out on $1.5 million because Apple had slower iPhone sales and managed only a net sales of $215.6 billion.
Yeah,
which was short of the goals.
So sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the entire executive team got missed out on that. So all the SVPs. But this is not in response to that. Mm-hmm. So you shouldn't read too much into it.
Right. And despite that, those results, Tim Cook is scheduled to receive another batch of 700,000 vested restricted stock units.
Right. As per his payment plan from 2011 or whatever.
Yeah, and that's going to come about in 2021.
Right.
So if Tim Cook is still in charge of Apple in 2021 and we're all still here on planet Earth in 2021, he'll receive that batch at that time.
Yep. And he has a chance to make even more money with performance goals, which seem to be back on track for the holiday quarter at least. Yeah.
So this should not inspire any crazy rumors, right? This shouldn't say that Johnny Ive is retiring, because obviously this was planned. This shouldn't tell us that there's going to be a red MacBook and it's going to be apocalyptically bad. This shouldn't tell us that the Mac's coming back as a cube.
No. MacBook
you like
Cube.
That one. You like that one.
Yeah.
This isn't an indicator that Apple's doomed, right?
No, it's just business as usual. It's
so
just
then why
odd,
did it happen just a few days before earnings?
It's just coincidence that it happened. They do it so people don't create rumors, but in Apple's case, it doesn't really work out that way. So they usually do these planned sales because they don't want to stoke investor fears. But
as you say, this has been planned for a long enough period of time. It could just be tax planning, right?
Yeah. For a lot of it, sometimes it is. Usually, well, not usually. Sometimes it is because they get paid so much in restricted stock units that vest, they have to pay taxes on that, and they have to sell a certain amount of shares, blah, 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 that are withheld from them. But those are usually vest at the same time when the RSUs vest. So this is slightly different.
Okay. So following this news, Tim Cook is left with 979,809 shares of Apple stock, worth more or less about $117.6 million.
That's pretty good. Pretty good.
It's a nice pocket change.
Yeah. It's going to his nephew, right? Some of it, at least.
I don't know.
I believe he did. He said that at one point.
Okay. Well, good for him and good for his nephew if that's the case. Mikey, this is another wonderful episode of the Apple Insider podcast, and it's blown past us. Where can people find you on the internet?
At AppleInsider.com and at Mikey Campbell 81 on Twitter.
I'm your host, Victor, and I'm at VMarks on Twitter. And if Apple brings back a Cube computer, we'll be sure to tell you all about it on the Apple Insider podcast.